Hello and welcome to this week's design challenge. We are looking at Mozart's Magic Flute, the magical world where there's princesses, princes, a birdman and the queen of the night. Exciting times. And this week, the resources that you're going to need, we're just going to pop up on screen. Hopefully you might have seen those. We're now going to put them up a day before just in case you want to get prepped. So you need a cereal box or a small box there, some sellotape and glue, A4 white paper, scissors, a pencil, a ruler, some black card, a desk lamp or a torch. So do go and gather those resources. So this week we are going to work with designer Rhiannon Newman Brown again, and I actually managed to find a photograph of Rhiannon as an ASM, an assistant stage manager here in a production of the Magic Flute. So I was really pleased to find that. So Rhiannon, tell us a little bit about this interesting looking photograph.
That is a very, very old photograph. About 15 years ago when I first started out in theatre, and I worked as an assistant stage manager, and that is a production of the Magic Flute, and I am standing in the wings there looking like I'm paying attention or possibly fiddling with my nails, and right next to me is a weird bird puppet magical animal. And that's kind of one of the really exciting things about the Magic Flute, is we've got all these kind of weird and wonderful, magical, mystical things, which is one of the starting points for this week's design challenge.
Yes, and if you want to know a little bit more about stage management, on Monday, on our live session, we are meeting a stage manager who's going to talk about that role a bit more. So that's a lovely connection there with that photo of you, Rhiannon. So if you can imagine in this piece, there is a serpent attack, so attacked by a deadly snake, and Prince Tomino gets attacked by the snake, but that's always something that is quite hard to stage. And I wondered, Rhiannon, if you had any ideas for us on how we might stage this monstrous attack on this prince.
Yes, so, I mean, that is one of the wonderful things about the Magic Flute, is that it has all these mystical, magical, larger-than-life elements, like the serpent, that is a kind of monster. There's also a magic flute, there's enchanted bells, we've got dancing animals, and we've got trials as well of fire and water. So we have all these spectacular things, which for a designer and a director, often the Magic Flute has some form of puppetry in it, or possibly some kind of projected video as a way of kind of putting these larger than life things on the screen. And this is kind of where we're going this week with the design challenge. And when I was looking through the production photographs from Garsington's last production of the Magic Flute, I found this photograph. And now, isn't this beautiful? This is a gorgeous set design. But really interestingly, in this photograph, they are using shadow work or shadow puppetry. In these windows, you can see there are people standing behind a sort of frosted window, and they've put the light behind those people so that you can see their shadow, their silhouette really clearly. And this gave me a thought as to how we could maybe have a go at putting a monster on stage and creating a little bit of shadow puppetry. So this is what we're going to do this week. We're going to make a little shadow puppet theatre, and then we can play around and experiment with it. So let's get going. The first thing you need is a cereal box, or it could be a shoe box. You could do something much bigger if you've got a big cardboard box. You could do that, but the thing is, you just need to make sure that you've got a big enough piece of white paper, because this white paper is going to become your screen, like the window. So just make sure that if you go a bigger scale, that you've got a big enough bit of white paper. Right, I'm going to put that to the side for one moment. So here we go. We are going to start off with our cereal box. Here we are. And I'm going to draw with my ruler. I'm going to draw a line on each side, like that. I hope you can see this nice and clearly. And across the top, like that. So can you see, I've drawn it with a Sharpie so you can see it, but you could just draw it with your pencil. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this central bit that I'm colouring in there so you can see it. We're going to cut that out, but we're going to leave it attached at the bottom. So here we go. You just have to be quite careful with the very first cut. If you start in a corner, whoops, with your scissors, here we go. Oh, my box is very bendy. There we go, we're in. So you just have to be quite careful with that initial cut. And then we're going to cut along the lines there. And along the top.
Great, and as you're cutting that, Rhiannon, I think I just need to do a little bit of a health and safety, so it's probably best to ask an adult in your house to cut this for you if you're a little bit younger, because I really don't want any cut fingers.
Brilliant.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
exactly.
Look at that.
Look at that. So does this look like a theatre to you? It does to me. So that's going to be our front. Now, we got to do the same thing on the back. So the same thing applies. Here we go. We're going to do a line on each side. Just a ruler's width is totally fine. You don't need to measure it out, or if you've got something at home that's a good width, you know, an inch or so. So here we go, same deal. Again, be very careful with the first cut. There we are, and I'll just cut that out. Once you've made this little theatre out of your box, you can have all sorts of fun playing around with all of quite a lot of our design challenges. You could probably use as influence to do some other little exercises. There we go. So now we can go, you can see all the way through it, front and back. So I'm going to get my sellotape, because at the moment we've got a very flappy end on one end, and we want to close that up. So here we go. Your sellotape. And if I just stand up for you for a second, then hopefully we can just put some sellotape across the end. Make sure that's stuck nice and tightly like that. So that end was open, that end was already closed, you know, that was the bottom, so that was stuck already. Now, we are going to do another little mark and a cut, so hopefully you can see this here. I'm going to mark out a slot on each end, okay? You're going to do that on each end. And then again, being very careful, it's the same technique, so you just need to be very careful with that initial cut. There we go. And then we're going to cut that out so that we've got a slot on each side. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. There we are. So you've got a slot on that side, and then making sure you do it on the same side. So that's close to this edge. So we want to make sure it's close to this edge. I hope that makes sense, because that's going to become the front. So again, be very careful with that initial cut. We're nearly done with this cutting.
It's definitely making sense there. And it's just, does this kind of thing, is it like you've done before, where this could then transfer into a theatre? You talked about scale before.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're effectively going to create a backdrop which we can light through. And often we do that in theatre to create nice washes of colour, or to create these sorts of effects for a projection screen, so we could use video projection. So there you go, you've got a cut on each side, and so this is the front here, we've got the front here. Now, we've got to get our piece of white paper. Now this is our screen, as I mentioned before, and we want to put this white paper on the back side of our box. Now, the neatest and tidiest way is to cut it to size. So lay it on top of your box, cut down one side, so you know that's going to fit in that way. And then we'll cut a little bit off the top, so we know it's going to fit in that way. Just like that. There we go. And we are going to tape that onto the back. We're going to try and get it nice and flat. Oh, hang on a second. Apologies, I'm doing it wrong. We want to put it into on the front, in there. So it's going to go in there. Do you see? We're popping it inside like that. And then you can fix it into place. So it's on the front edge. This will all become clear in 2 seconds when I finish it up like that. So there we go. So that is effectively our projection screen. If I just quickly move my lamp, so there you can see the lamp is shining through the hole at the back onto the paper at the front edge. And then you've got your slits are close to the piece of paper at the front. Okay, so that's your theatre. I'm just going to put that to one side because now we've got to make our puppets. So I'm just going to pop it over there. Now, our puppets, we use our black caper and we want to just draw some really simple silhouettes of this. For us, it's going to be a monster, but you can play around with this to your heart's content. But we're going to start by drawing a monster. I'm going to attempt to draw it upside down. Now what we want to do is we want to have a little bit of a base there. We want to come about 1 centimetre or so because we're going to need to be able to get hold of it. And then I'm going to draw a really simple shape of a monster. Hopefully you can see how I'm using a pastel crayon here, so you can see my drawing, but you could just use a pencil. So there we go. There is a very scary looking monster, and we're gonna cut him out of our paper. Now I'm going to do it nice and quickly, but you could do this really carefully and take a little bit more time over it.
As you're cutting that out, Rhiannon, just so this monster is a serpent. It's a snake that's attacking Tomino, this prince in a forest. So you can create literally your own monster. It might be some sort of mechanical thing. It can be anything in your imagination. I would love to see those things that you create. So use your imagination on that one.
Tip from me is that I cheated a little bit and I looked on the internet and I looked for clip art monster images, because clip art tends to be very, very simple stylized pictures. And so basically I copied this from that. So you can use, do a little bit of research on the internet and that will help you out to design your monster. So there we go. I've cut him out, as you can see there. And this is in fact one I've done a little bit earlier, where I've also cut out the eye. I hope you can see that nice and clearly. I cut out the eye really carefully, and that's lovely if you can include that, because you know that the light is going to shine through there, so that makes your design just that little bit more interesting. Now, I also want us to do a figure. We need a Prince Tomino. Again, I'm just doing this upside down so you can see, very simple shape. It can be a stick man. It really doesn't need to be anything more complicated than that. But importantly, you want to put a little tab as though he's standing on something, because when you cut that out, let me just find my little figure that I've already cut out. You're going to fold that bit back. Hopefully you can see that, so that he can stand up in front of your little theatre, just like that. Can you see that? So you're folding on that little tab line so that he's got somewhere to stand up. So I'm going to do one more thing, because this is really fun. Also on my piece of paper here, I'm going to use as much of my black card as possible, not be too wasteful. And I'm going to draw some flames, because our monster is going to breathe fire onto Tomino. So hopefully you can see that. If you just ignore my little figure for a minute, just a flame shape. And then also what I'm going to need to do is cut out what will become a handle. So this is a kind of long rectangle. And then we've got the flames, which we can also cut out. Now, I have cut one out previously, so I'm going to put that to one side. And here are my flames that I cut out before. And I've created a handle, so as the puppeteer, I can put these into the model box and make my monster breathe fire. And I will show you how to do that in just a second. But if you go back to this, just this rectangle you've cut out, you can just fold it over a couple of times and it will make a really strong handle, which basically I put some sellotape around it, as you can see there reflecting, and then I attached it to my little cutout flames. So that's how you're going to make your flames. Right, so we have a monster cut out, we have some flames on a handle, and we have a little figure. Now, I'm going to show you with the box we made how this all goes together. So I'm just going to move my camera and we can show you nice and clearly. So give me 1 second.
And this moment I think is always quite difficult to stage. So I'm quite excited to see how this might, if I was directing a production of the Magic Flute, this might actually be a way of the monster being on stage with us as a kind of back screen puppet show type thing. So you never know, some of your designs might actually end up being in productions one day. Look at that, that's so cool.
Here we go. I'm just going to get some masking tape really quickly and just tape down my stage there at the front so it's not in your way. So here is our puppet theatre. There we go. And I've just moved the camera so you can see that a bit more clearly. Here's my desk lamp. So I'm just pushing it right down so it's shining right into the back aperture that we cut. So here's my little figure, and I'm going to take my monster. Now I've got to get him the right way round, and I'm threading him through the gap that we made at the side. And I've got my other hand on this side so that I can receive the little piece of paper on this side. Oh, I've got a rogue flap. There we go. So here is our monster. So here we go. We can manipulate this and put him in the right relationship to our little figure. So this is Tomino down the front, and here is our scary, scary monster that can appear in the background here. And I've got a rogue little bit of cardboard in the wrong place, so hang on. There we go. So now I'm going to get my flames on my little stick, and I'm going to see if I can make my monster breathe fire. I'm just trying to get him in the right place so that it makes sense. There we go. So using my little stick, I'm going to see what happens. There we go. He's breathing fire all over our little figure that's standing in front. So you can have loads of fun with this.
That is absolutely just, I love that. I think the scale of it is fantastic. It's really convincing as a monster on stage there. There's also Rhiannon in this piece. I'm just thinking Tomino is set these trials. He goes on a quest, and two of them are that he has to sort of conquer fire and water, and it's really, really scary. Is there a way that we could also use this shadow puppetry to create those effects in our piece as well?
Absolutely. So using the same principle that we did before. So here we've got some wave shapes that I've cut out of a piece of card, and then I've added on a little extra kind of handle on each side that we can I can thread through. So this bit you would do without the audience. So this would be a kind of preset little number. And obviously the audience wouldn't be able to see all this in real life. And then we can have a little play around here with some water appearing. So here's the waves in relation to our figure. So this is the water getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm just feeding it from one hand to the other across the screen, and then the waves die down again. And Tomino has survived the trial of water. So there is just a really simple example. I also had a play around with, again, really simple. The more simple you can keep these silhouettes, the better. They work really well if they're nice and simple. So this, for example, was some fire that I also did, and I conjoined it with some waves. So in the story, he combats the fire first. So there's our flickering fire. And then he has to endure the water trial. So here come our waves crashing over him and then dying down as it passes across our screen. So that is some really, really, really simple bit of storytelling with the shadow puppets. And hopefully you can have a really jolly time experimenting, because once you've got your little cardboard box with your lamp, you can have all sorts of fun. I even made a tree to see what that would do. And by just putting it in there, I mean, you could play around for days and tell all sorts of stories, not just the story of the magic flute. But this is particularly good for the magic flute because of the magical, mystical things like the monster and the waves and the fire.
Utterly brilliant, Rhiannon. Thank you so much for inspiring us all. Do send us examples of what you've created at home, and don't forget to tag at Garsington Opera and use the hashtag #GOMondayMotivation. I would love to show those as part of our live session at 10 AM on Monday. Thanks, Rhiannon. Bye, everyone.